Hey, Shamik, first thing first, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us on the Growth Mindset podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Glad to be here,
Awesome.
Shelly.
Awesome. So let's start off with something which I know is very important for people, right? Food. So
Mhm.
there are a couple of things that I want to understand from you before we get into the entire conversation about food industry, eating organic, and so on. So first, let's start with why should someone even care about eating organic fruits and vegetables as compared to what we get, let's say, in general stores?
Right. So, I mean, the short answer is because organic food has much higher nutrient density, right? This is something that people don't talk about. Usually, when we talk about organic, we talk about, oh, no chemicals and things like that. But what's really important is the fact that organic food is actually much higher in content in nutrients, right? Antioxidants, polyphenols, vitamins, all of these things. So that's really the main reason why you should eat organic. It's not because you want to avoid chemicals. Our body has mechanisms to get rid of chemicals, right? Our kidneys can flush out toxins and things like that. But the real reason is because this food is more nutritious, right? It
Hmm.
helps you reverse your aging. It helps you be healthier. It helps you fight diseases and so on and so forth.
Interesting. And for people that might just be wondering, okay, what is Irshad even talking organic and so on, right? Maybe can you just give some context around what is
Sure.
organic versus what we get outside?
Sure. See, most people think of organic as in no pesticides are used. If you go and talk to 100 people, 99 of them will say, okay, organic means there are no pesticides. But that's just the tip of the iceberg because um, when you say organic, it basically means, first of all, no chemical fertilizers should be used as well. So it's not just pesticides, right?
Hmm.
Secondly, the whole idea is that as an organic farmer, you are essentially feeding the soil, right? And the plants kind of take care of themselves, right? So you don't actually provide specific nutrients to the plants, you provide nutrients to the soil, right? And then you create a big set of ecosystem under the soil, and thereby it happens. So I think a big part of it is no chemical fertilizers, no chemical pesticides, no weedicides as well. So in organic farming, it's very labor intensive. And if you look at regular farming, they would put a small bottle of weedicide so that weeds don't come. That's also not done in organic farming as well, right? So it's not just pesticides. That's one thing that I want to kind of tell our
Hmm.
audience that that's just one part of the thing. There are several other things, but essentially no chemicals used anywhere. And this does not stop only at the stage of growing your food. It also needs to be taken care of post harvest as well, right? So
Hmm.
when, let's say, different fruits are harvested, a lot of times during transport there are fungicides which are used as well because fungus should not be developing during those conditions and things like that. So if you are really having organic food, it's also about the post harvest processes that are kind of coming in terms of there should be no fungicides which are used. So essentially, no chemicals at any stage while growing, after harvesting, everything, right?
Interesting. Yeah, this is good what you mentioned with regards to chemicals not even being used after it is harvested, right? Because in the transit, a lot of times that does happen. But can you give us kind of an idea because you have more experience in this field? Like
Mhm.
what are some implications of consuming food that are probably mixed with chemicals during harvest or after harvest? What are the implications on the health?
Sure, sure. See, so let's talk about, for example, let's talk about the fertilizers angle, right? We talked about that. Okay, you should not be using chemical fertilizers. So one fertilizer that you'll always hear about is urea, right? The government subsidizes urea. It's available for very cheap, so every farmer uses it, right? And every farmer uses it because plants need nitrogen to grow, right? So nitrogen is
Hmm.
required for vegetative growth, just like humans also need nitrogen to grow, right? Because we need proteins to grow, right?
Yep.
And the component of proteins is amino acids, and in amino acids there is a lot of nitrogen, right? So the same thing with plants as well. So farmers supply urea to basically supply nitrogen to these plants, right? Now the problem is that when you use chemical fertilizers, they release their nitrogen in the form of nitrates, right? Very quickly into the soil, right? And plants also take it up very quickly. So this basically ends up building a lot of nitrate content in the plant body itself, right? Now,
Hmm.
so when there is a lot of nitrate content in the plant body, unfortunately, what happens is that basically this causes a bunch of lifestyle issues in terms of high blood pressure and things like that, right? So our body does require nitrates, but not too much of it.
Yeah.
And when you use nitrogenous fertilizers, then your food has a lot of nitrates in it. This is something that people don't talk about, right? Everybody talks about, okay, there is chemicals in our food and things like that. But this is an important aspect to take care of, that when you are eating conventionally grown food, right, which has been grown using a lot of nitrogenous fertilizers, there are a lot of nitrates in that plant body and in your food, which is not healthy for you, right? So that's number one. The second thing is purely in terms of all of the pesticides as well, right? So now, if you look at the origin of pesticides, the origin of pesticides was actually during World War II, right? So it's very interesting because the origin of fertilizers was during World War One, when basically there were these, we were making bombs with nitroglycerin, right? And for that, there were these two chemists, Haber and Bosch, who basically created the Haber-Bosch process to take nitrogen from the air and fix it into making it ammonia, right? Those same factories were then later on, after the war got over, were used to make nitrogenous fertilizers, and every farmer started using them, right? So similarly, pesticides, the origin of it is actually nerve gas. So there was a lot of nerve gas factories that had got created during World War II. There was excess capacity, right? So now the war got over and there were winners and losers, but then they had to decide, what do we do with all of this excess capacity, right? We are not killing people anymore. So they said, okay, let's try to kill pests with this, right? So a lot of our the pesticides that are used currently in the market are a class of compounds called organophosphates, right? Now, organophosphates are essentially the same class of compounds that were used in nerve gas as well, right? Basically, now the whole idea is to affect the nervous system of insects to kind of kill them, right? So obviously, I think it's not something which was originally meant as nerve gas. Using that is not good, number one. Number two is that when you so some of the pesticides are surface pesticides which can be washed off with very thorough cleaning it with vinegar, cleaning it with baking soda and warm water and things like that, right? But there are certain things which certainly go inside as well, number one, right? Number two, if you look at different fruits and vegetables, some of them have peels and some of them don't, right? If you're eating an apple, most probably you'll eat it with its peel, right? So some of these sort of things also, if there are pesticides in it, it's a problem. So what's the problem? The problem is that don't get me wrong, your body will still get rid of those whatever chemicals find its way into your body. But your kidneys, which are the organs which will get rid of these pesticides, they come under a lot of pressure because of that,
Yeah.
right? So they end up overworking. Your body will still get rid of it, but it will overwork. Now, there was one really interesting study which was conducted where basically they gave a group of people organic food, and then they gave another group of people food which was grown with chemicals, right? And they tested the urine of both of those classes, and they saw that the content of certain chemicals in the urine was consistently higher for the group which was given conventionally grown food, right? That basically means that the chemical that has gone into the body is the kidneys are getting rid of it, but it's putting a lot of pressure on kidneys. And if you have seen that there is a lot of kidney diseases, etc., becoming more common, they are hitting us at a much younger age. Dialysis centers have become a very good investment opportunity. Dialysis centers are springing up left, right, and center. When we were kids, we had never even heard of them, right? So I think a lot of stuff is kind of happening around that. So that's about the pesticides part of it. Then the third piece is with respect to antioxidants, right? So if you look at, this is actually one of the most important reasons why you should eat organic food, is because organic food has much more antioxidants, right? Now, I'll come to what those antioxidants are, but essentially antioxidants basically neutralize free radicals, right? So during various different physiological processes in your body, free radicals get created. Okay, now these free radicals, they can basically damage your tissues, right? And one theory of aging is that aging is caused by free radicals in your body, right? Now, antioxidants basically combine with free radicals and remove those free radicals from your body, right? Free radicals come in for various reasons. I mean, one is your physiological processes. When you're exposed to pollution and things like that, right? Those also cause free radical stress, everything, right? These all cause generation of free radicals in your body. Antioxidants remove free radicals, right? Thereby, kind of making sure that you don't age as fast, but be more importantly, your chances of getting things like cancer, etc., are also reduced, right? Because these free radicals, which could be fairly dangerous for your tissue, is getting removed by these antioxidants. So organic food is very rich in antioxidants. And the reason it's rich in antioxidants is interesting. The reason it's rich in antioxidants is because, see, when you're growing plants organically, they have to you cannot use any chemicals. So when there is a pest attack, how will the plant defend itself? So turns out that plants are actually very good at defending themselves. They already have several enzyme pathways, etc., built in, right? And so much so that basically when there is an insect which is biting some of its leaves, the plant produces compounds to get rid of it. Okay. Now, in this process, it takes the help of microbes, bacteria, as well as fungi, which live both under the soil as well as on the surface of the leaves and things like that, right? So these microbes essentially help produce various compounds. Even the plants themselves produce various compounds, right, to basically fend off diseases as well as pests. Now, when you are doing conventional farming, what happens is the plant is chilling out. The plant is basically like, "Arey koi aur dekh lega." Somebody else is going to get rid of this for me, right? Because you are spraying some pesticide, you are spraying something, right? So the plant doesn't really have to do any action on its own. So thereby these antioxidants do not get produced. So polyphenols, antioxidants, these are chemicals produced by either the plants or by the microbes which work closely together with plants to essentially create these. And these are the ones which are antioxidants. The other good part about this is also one of the reasons why organic food tastes better as well, because a lot of these compounds provide the taste, pungency, all of that stuff to and flavor to organic food, right? So a lot of times when people will eat organic fruits, they would say, "Oh, okay, this is very interesting. This is tasting, more complex. There are more flavors in it." A lot of that is because of these molecules which the plant would have created to fend against diseases and pests, right? So I think that's also another thing. So the fourth thing, which brings me to the fourth point, the reason we should eat organic food is because it's tastier, right? Forget about even if you forget about the health angle, etc. It's just that it's tastier, and I'm very thankful to Mother Nature for it, because a lot of times Mother Nature has made some foods which are tasty but not healthy for us, right? But at least when it comes to fruits and vegetables, a lot of things which are tasty for you is also very healthy for you as well, right? So that's the fourth thing. There are a few other angles to it also, which are, I would not say are completely like the theoretical definition of organic versus inorganic. But if you look at, for example, ripening of fruits, right? Now, mango season is coming pretty soon. And what you'll find when you buy mangoes in the market versus if you have a mango tree at home is that you'll find that the mangoes in the market are usually very tasteless, right? Grapes in the market, they don't taste much. And that's because most of them have been artificially ripened, right? Now, this artificial ripening can be done legally and it can be done illegally. So illegally is when you use something like carbide. So carbide is illegal. It's a really bad chemical, can cause a lot of health issues and things like that. Unfortunately, in India, a lot of unscrupulous vendors do use carbide. But there is a legal way. The legal way is to use ethylene chambers, right? So most big retailers would actually use ethylene chambers to ripen the fruit that you're eating, right? Now, the problem is that, so ethylene chambers is legal. There's no damage to your health or anything like that. It's just that what happens essentially is that, so the so basically when fruits ripen, they give out ethylene. So when a fruit is exposed to ethylene, then the fruit thinks that the ripening process gets faster. So let's say a bunch of banana is kept inside that ethylene chamber and you have pumped in ethylene gas into it, right? This, from the green banana, it starts becoming yellow overnight, right? So within 24 hours, it's now completely yellow and you feel like it's ripe, right? And you take it out, it's ripe, but it still does not taste sweet, right? That's because the natural process has not happened yet. So the sugars have not fully developed, because that you have to give time. You cannot have sugars develop like within 12 hours, 24 hours, right? So in my opinion, although this does not come under the official definition of organic, but naturally ripened fruits, right? which you have left it to ripen for quite some time. You have not put it in an ethylene chamber. A lot of it has ripened on the tree itself as much as possible, right? These will taste far, far better, and they have far better, they taste far better because a lot of those natural sugars are actually developed, right? And they are supposed to be even more nutritious for you as well, right? Simply because everything has kind of developed in its entirety, right? Whereas you have not tried to kind of meddle with things, so to speak. So I think this is, it's just a little bit of a diversion. It's not necessarily about organic, but ripening of fruits, artificial, natural, is something that I think consumers should think about and care about because it affects their nutrition as well as taste. There are, in terms of organic, there is another angle to it. This angle is, let's say, for example, let's say you are eating, you have 10,000 rupees budget, grocery budget in a month, right? Now you look at organic prices and you saw that the prices are higher and you decide, okay, I cannot afford to buy everything organic, right? Because my budget is limited to 10,000 bucks. So what should I buy organic, right? And the way I actually kind of think about it is that if you draw like uh, uh, an X and Y axis graph, right? Or a matrix, like a typical consultant 2x2 matrix sort of a thing, right? And on one side is basically the time after harvesting that you are eating the thing, right? So if something which is, you are eating it right after harvesting, that point of time, those are things that you should really buy organic. Things which you can eat 2 years after harvesting, it's okay. It's not as important for eating in organic, right? So an example is if you're eating fresh vegetables, is something that you eat very much very quickly after harvest, right? So vegetables you should definitely have organic. If you're looking at rice, you might have old rice which is 2 years old, right? It was harvested 2 years back. So the efficacy of the chemical residues that might be on it reduces substantially over a period of time. Automatically, it keeps on going down with storage. So things where you have just harvested it and you are eating it, those you should certainly buy organic because there has not been enough time for the chemicals efficacy to get reduced, right? Having said that, don't get me wrong. This is only from the chemicals getting lowered perspective. Even organic rice will have much better nutrient density as compared to regular rice, right? So that's one angle. The second angle is, how much of cooking are you going to do, right? So if it is something that you are going to eat without much cooking, then you should buy organic. If it is something which you're going to really cook a lot, then maybe you can still do without organic, right? If it's a choice that you need to make. Because when the process of cooking itself destroys a lot of these chemicals, right? So your salad vegetables must be organic. Your greens must be organic because greens you usually do a very light cooking. You don't cook it for a long time, right? You'll just do a light saute or things like that, right? So these should certainly be organic. But if you are going, let's say your brinjal, right, or your potatoes and things like that, maybe you are going to fry your brinjal a lot, cook it a lot. So it's not as important as compared to having your cucumber organic because your cucumber, you're going to eat it without cooking. So I would usually like draw these two axes saying, okay, on this axis is how much time after harvest, on this axis, how much of cooking are you doing, right? And say that things which are near the origin, things which really need to be eaten immediately after harvest and without cooking are those which should be absolutely organic. And as you go towards the other side of the matrix, probably not, right? So that's one way to think about that. There is another angle to this entire organic thing though, which is the veg versus non-veg thing, right? So at Farmizen, we obviously sell fruits, vegetables, staples. We do not sell anything non-vegetarian. But one important angle is that if you are eating meat, right, chicken, mutton, whatever, going for that sort of meat, which has basically not been exposed to too much of chemicals in their feed is very important. The reason being is that chemicals actually accumulate in the body of animals, right? So when you eat a chicken which has been fed a diet of a lot of conventional produce, right? A lot of those chemicals, some of those chemicals that the kidney of the chicken would have got rid of. but a lot of that would have accumulated in the body of the chicken, right? So when
Hmm.
you're eating that, you're getting like a super dose. So it can be argued that perhaps it's more important to, like, between veg and non-veg, if you are somebody who eats both, probably your non-veg you should try for more cleaner food before
Hmm.
you get to your veg, because that accumulates a lot of stuff, right? And
Hmm.
meat also accumulates a lot of things like antibiotics, right? Because you would basically be giving them. See, what happens is when chicken are grown, right? These chicken are all stuffed into cages, all very nearby, into the same place. They don't have place to move around, and they are given food which basically makes them fat very
Yeah.
quickly, right?
So
Now, two things happen because of this. Their immunity goes down, right? Because they're not getting any exercise. They're always within like a small, like 1/3 square feet space or half a square feet space where they're just roaming around, right? They cannot go outside. Secondly, is they're basically grown very fast, right? So
yeah.
they give sometimes they give hormones, etc., to make them grow faster than regular, right? So basically, their immunity is low. Now, what happens is, and they're all staying so close by. So if one of those chickens gets a flu, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the entire farm will die overnight. Like,
True.
you'll have 10,000 birds dying overnight because they got some. So what happens? So to prevent this, basically farmers give them a lot of antibiotics as preventive, not for
Hmm.
cure, but okay, I'm going to give them antibiotics with every meal, right? So when you get all of these antibiotics, finally what happens when you eat that chicken, right? You are actually getting a lot of those antibiotics into your body as well, right? When you're getting a lot of those antibiotics into your body, couple of things happens, right? So first is that you kind of develop that whole, like, there's a whole antibiotic resistance things that happens, right? Which is why many of the germs nowadays, like, you keep on having superbug versions which basically don't, the older antibiotics don't work with it. That is one thing that happens. But
Yeah.
the second thing is it affects your gut bacteria. So humans, as you might be knowing, are we have more bacterial cells than
Yes.
human cells in our body. So we are actually like walking, talking sets of bacteria. I am more of bacteria than Shameek, right? So,
True.
and a lot of these bacteria stay in our gut, right? And these bacteria are very responsible for making nutrients available from our food to us, right? And when we have a lot of antibiotics, those bacteria get killed, right? Because antibiotics are what? Antibiotics are medicines or chemicals which kills bacteria, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of, so they kill good bacteria as well as bad bacteria, unfortunately, right? So they're supposed to kill bad bacteria, but there is collateral damage of good bacteria also, right? So when you charge those antibiotic missiles, either because you are eating a lot of antibiotics yourself or because you are eating chicken which was raised with a lot of antibiotics, right? Then the problem is that your gut bacteria gets affected. When your gut bacteria gets affected, your ability to absorb nutrition from your food is affected, and your ability to also your immunity is affected as well, because this gut bacteria play a very important role in immunity as well, right? So yeah, so that's another angle to organic food, that it's not just about fruits and vegetables, but even when you are looking at, if you're non-vegetarian, if you're looking at meat, eggs, milk, all of these sort of things as well, right? There is a case to be made for organic stuff for that as well, right? And availability for that non-vegetarian stuff is actually a lot more limited and more difficult to find, right? You will probably find a few places where you'll find organic fruits, veggies. You'll find a lot of places where you'll find organic grains, staples, rice, etc. But if you want to find really good chicken, really good mutton, you'll find very few places, right? Even milk also, much lesser places. But they are also important when you have a dialogue about organic food, right? So that's
Yeah.
one thing. One interesting tidbit, let me add here, which is basically uh, with respect to nutrient density, right? So, and I said that organic, I mean, if there's the single most, there are many, many reasons why you should eat organic food, but if there's one single reason, that's basically nutrient density. So just to make that more clearer, basically, Irshad, if you eat, uh, uh, if your parents ate one orange 30 years back, right, the amount of vitamins they would get from that, in order to get those same amount of vitamins, you will need to eat 7 to 8 oranges today, right? So which
True.
means that you will need to consume, like, I don't know, 700, 800 calories to get the same amount of micronutrients, right? So basically what has happened is calories have become very accessible to us in general, and our food has become calorie rich but nutrient sparse, right?
Yes.
And I think organic also the same thing, right? Because we have moved away a lot from organic, so our food has become very nutrient sparse as well, right? And we can talk in detail about why that happens and things like that. But yeah, so I think that's something to keep in mind. There are if you have noticed the news in Bangalore in the last, I think it came out 2 months back. So there was this whole news around finding heavy metal
Yes.
residues, etc.
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
right? So see, if somebody is growing good organic food, they should be doing it using compost, which they have probably prepared at their own farm and things like that, right? Rather than using commercial fertilizers. A lot of times, commercial fertilizers, they use industrial waste as the raw material for making commercial
Correct.
fertilizers. So there are actually a lot of heavy metal residues found inside commercial fertilizers itself, right? So that's another reason to eat organic food, is because if organic food is grown properly, it should have lesser heavy metal residues as compared to chemically grown stuff. This is all about nutrition, but there are other reasons why you should eat organic food. One of the biggest reasons you should eat organic food is because it's much better for the environment, right? So if you look at agriculture is actually one of the most polluting industries out
Yes.
there, right? And it's usually not obvious to people from the outside. People from the outside think of agriculture as a very romantic thing, oh, farming, etc., all of that stuff. But the reality is that it has polluted our world like anything, right? Conventional agriculture. And that's one of the very important reasons why we should look at organic regenerative farming, right? In order to cut that down. And let's talk a little bit about why that happens, right? So basically, see, the first thing when you talk about the climate, you have this whole you have the greenhouse effect that you talk about, right? Where there is global warming, sun rays are hitting the earth, but the escaping radiation is not being allowed to escape because greenhouse gases are trapping the escaping radiation, right? That's why greenhouse effect happens, and there is global warming, which kind of causes all of these floods and things like that. So the basic reason for global warming is these greenhouse gases, one of which is carbon dioxide, right? So the way to think about it is that carbon in the air is bad for the environment. Carbon under the soil is good for the environment, right? Now, but what have we as humans been doing? What we as humans have been doing is digging out fossil fuels from millions of years back, which was basically carbon, which was trapped under the soil for millions of years. And I said that carbon under the soil is good. So we are taking that out. We are burning that coal, petroleum, etc. We are releasing all of that carbon dioxide into the air, right? Which is bad, which is causes greenhouse emissions and all. And the issue is that nature has a beautiful way of trapping that carbon into the air, from the air back into the soil, right? Which is basically your carbon cycle. We have all learned about it in class 5, 6
Yep.
in school. But what happens is that, so in organic farming, this carbon cycle works beautifully, right? Because a big role is played by microorganisms in the soil, the fungus, the bacteria that live in the soil. Just like I mentioned that in our gut, there are several, there are billions and billions of microbes, bacteria. So similarly, inside soil, there is a lot of fungus and bacteria which is there, right? And this fungus and bacteria, they play a very important role in this whole carbon cycle as well. So essentially, see, if you see, plants basically remove carbon from the air by doing photosynthesis, right? Photosynthesis, creating carbs. Then the plant dies. That plant dying, the plant dead body falls on the earth, right, on the soil, and then that's decomposed by all of these microbes which are there, right? And then different organic acids get created, which are basically, carbon is a big component in them, and that is how carbon slowly gets added back to the soil, right? So any place where good organic farming is done, the soil organic carbon percentage ratio starts increasing substantially, right? If you look at Punjab, for example, in Punjab, before Green Revolution, the soil organic carbon percentage ratio was more than 4%. Okay. After Green Revolution, after we have kind of really taken up conventional farming, now it's 0.32%, right? So it has become like less than 1/10 of what it was during Green Revolution time. So where is that carbon? So if the soil organic carbon percentage is reducing, where is that? That is basically in the atmosphere, right? So organic farming is a very good way of trapping back carbon into the soil itself, right? Number one. Number two, we talked about fertilizers in organic farming, nitrogenous fertilizers. So what happens is when you use urea or NPK, DAP, any of these other nitrogenous fertilizers, a very small percentage of it actually gets used by the plant, and a fairly large percentage basically gets unused and just flows away. Right? Now, as it flows away, it finds itself in all our water bodies, right? So finally, it finds itself in our oceans, right? And when it goes to the ocean, basically what happens is there's so much of nitrogen there, it causes algal blooms, right? So algae starts blooming on this ocean surface. When algae starts blooming on the ocean surface, they suffocate out all of the fish, right? So fish start dying in the oceans, and the ability of the ocean to act as a carbon sink is also hurt significantly. See, basically, even the oceans, along with our grasslands and our dense rainforests, they are a major carbon sink. Carbon sink means what removes carbon from the atmosphere, right? So when we kill the ecosystem in our oceans, that affects the ability of oceans to act as a carbon sink, and hence the carbon stays in the atmosphere. So our use of nitrogenous fertilizer finally ends up causing that. Our use of nitrogenous fertilizers also end up killing our earthworms, or they go away from that particular farm into some other place, right? So when earthworms go away from the soil, that causes a lot of problems. So it's a small animal, but it has so much of implication in our lives. In fact, the two animals which we underestimate the implication and the contribution of them to our lives are earthworms and bees, right? So bees, for example, super important. 87% of the plants in the world require pollination to produce food, right? This pollination is largely done by bees, right? And when we do chemical farming, because of the sprays, bees also get killed, right? So other insects also get killed, bees also get killed. They don't stay there. In fact, sometimes we hear even our organic farmers, many times they're surrounded by chemical farms, right? And the other day, one of the organic farmers was basically saying, you know what, my problem is that whenever there are mango orchards near me, and every time my yield is really nice, and a lot of bees do pollination and things like that. But just when it's mango flowering season, then all my neighboring farmers, they do these sprays, and the bees run away even from my farm also. They don't want to stay there, right? And my yield actually drops, right? So anyway, I think organic farming is really good for biodiversity, right? And biodiversity is very intricately linked with our environment as well, right? It causes our environment to become better if you have a diverse system of bees, butterflies, earthworms, everything together, because nature's systems basically work, right? So this is another reason why you should actually eat organic food, because it's basically how it's good for the world, it's good for the planet. And finally, this may not be relevant for you if you are not a farmer, etc. But organic farming is also much better for farmers also, right? So the reason why it's better for farmers is because in organic farming, the focus is on improving your soil's long-term health, right? See, in chemical farming, what happens is that chemical farming is about big seed companies, big fertilizer companies, big pesticides companies making all of the money, right? So the whole system is designed so that basically the corporates essentially get all of the money out. The poor farmer doesn't get money, and the poor consumer does not get nutrition, right?
True.
It all goes into the stock prices of those 5-6 big companies, right, which control a lot of agriculture across the world. And in organic farming, we encourage a lot of use of local indigenous materials, right? So, for example, you'll have a cow in your farm, right, and you'll use that cow dung to basically grow stuff, right? Or you'll have chicken, and the chicken manure you'll use, or your goat manure you'll use. So a lot of these things, you'll save your seeds. You will stop buying stuff from outside. You will not do any pesticides. You will basically create a biodiversity in your farm so that there is natural pest control mechanisms, right? So these sort of things you'll do in organic farming, which reduces your input costs substantially, right? Thereby, it's actually better for farmers as well, and farmers don't spoil their health, right? See, we don't uh, realize it, but a lot of farmers, they really, when they expose themselves to agrochemicals, they actually end up damaging their health as well, because many times they don't take the precautions, right? They might not be wearing a proper mask when they are doing those spraying, and you might have heard stories about how farmers in Kerala, they got hospitalized en masse because the pesticide was just flowing around in the air. Then
Correct.
I know of one farmer, who basically rubbed his eye with his hand, which had pesticide in it, and he lost one eye, right? So it actually does damage farmers' health quite a bit. You guys might have also seen how it has happened. At least there are two big incidents that I'm familiar with in India, where in some village school, like kids died. Many kids died during midday meal scheme, etc. Because what happened was that, like, the vessel in which they had kept something, I think the oil for cooking or something, that vessel was basically had one of these really dangerous pesticides in it before, and it was not fully washed properly. And then in that same vessel care, they had kept the oil, and that cooked, and several kids actually died. So it's not good for in general farmers, villagers, etc. as well. The regular conventional method of farming, and it is focused on creating a very exploitative system, whereas organic farming, it's about getting back our food sovereignty, right? And which I think is a very important thing. Forget about organic, etc. But if you have seen all of the stuff that's happening on the internet now, right, where food farmer, for example, he's bringing out a lot of really nice topics going on to food labels, right? And he's analyzing them, and these companies are suing him, right?
Yeah.
So what's essentially happening in some sense is that we as consumers, you and me, we are all trying to reclaim a bit of control on our food choices, right? Uh, we have been slowly, with TV, with Instagram, with ads, and all sorts of supermarkets, corporates have been trying to take it away from us, right?
True.
And we have been fighting back, and we have been saying, okay, we are going to learn more about food and nutrition. We are going to read labels. We are going to make a choice, right? We are going to choose where to buy from, which farmer to buy from, and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of these things are happening in India now, especially last 4 or 5 years. Uh, Interestingly, this sort of so I would call it almost like some sort of food counterculture or movement is happening, right? So interestingly, this sort of stuff happened in the US as well, several years back, right?
Correct.
And that's why the organic movement, etc., is like 10, 20 years ahead in some of these countries, right?
Correct.
In US, UK, and so forth.
US, Canada.
And I think another example is if Cuba, right? So Cuba as a country, because they came under so many embargoes, etc., Cuba has one of the most efficient urban agriculture that happens, right? So there are more than 7,000 or 8,000 farms inside Havana itself, as one of the major cities in Cuba, right? And they do a lot of urban agriculture, with the idea being that food security should be something in the hand of individual consumers. If I am buying my food, I should also probably be part of growing my food, or help somebody grow the food, so that you bring the consumers and the producers closer together. Because the further consumers and producers are, the bigger the chance of one big evil corporate being in the middle and manipulating things around.
True.
So I think a lot of that stuff has been happening across the world, and it's an interesting time in India as well, as we are seeing. Cool.
Yeah.
Tell me.
I must say that I had all of these questions already planned, but in the entire course of this conversation, you've covered them one by one already, which is really amazing. And I like the fact how you connected all of those dots, right? Because it's not only about organic food, it's not about only eating, it's all connected, right? With regards to our health, what we do. You compared veg versus non-veg, which is also a very important criteria. People don't understand. They just go ahead and devour non-veg. Not understanding the impact it has, because as you mentioned, it has all of those chemicals, it's stored in the body, and when you eat it, it again comes in your body, and then it's a lot of work for your health for your internal body first to get rid of that, for especially your kidneys. Because I know my dad has this kidney issue, right? He is on dialysis like twice a week. So I know what it is. It's not simple. It's whatever goes inside your mouth. It's a lot of work for our internal bodies then to actually get things out of our bodies again. So it's not something very
Right.
simple. And not only is that an important criteria, then we also talk about the environment, why this is important for the environment. Because if we are not taking care of the environment, it's all a full circle, right? They call it a circle of life.
Correct.
So if you're not being conscious of this, then obviously we are going to see more and more issues. And yeah, I understand that we oftentimes, this is something that I've heard a lot of people saying that, organic foods, fruits, vegetables are a little costlier as compared to normal. Obviously they are, right? But when you look at the longer run, they're not as costly. Because imagine you, if you get infected, if you get some diseases, then you have to spend way more money in the hospitals and so on, to just ensure that you're getting those things that have been accumulated inside your body. So I really love the fact you touch upon all of those. You touched upon the heavy metals item, which was just in the news 2 months ago in Bangalore, right? Like having all of those. You spoke about farmers. What is the impact on farmers for this? You spoke about how farmers are benefited when they do organic farming, how it is helpful for all of us. And also at the end of the day, big farmers, not big farmers, but big agricultural uh, giants. There are many
Companies.
companies that are actually controlling not only India, but also almost the entire world. There are some 7, 8, 10 top companies that are actually doing this. Uh, i-
Right.
if you go to other countries like US, Canada, they are pretty aware. Like you would notice that in at least in US and Canada, there are people that are doing house uh, agriculture, right? They in their own gardens, they're actually going ahead and growing vegetables. They're doing house farming and so on. I think in India that's picking up. You rightly picked it up, because in the US, organic, natural is something which people are very conscious about. Not the entire generation, but still there are a good amount of people that know about it. However, in India, that's not the case. People are waking up, but yeah, when people like, as you mentioned, food pharma, uh, people like you and I basically talk about this, that's when people will actually know what's actually happening behind the scenes. People are falling sick not because of your health only, but you're falling sick because of what our bodies don't have to fight against: immunity, the importance of gut microbiome, right? I heard that there are almost a trillion bacteria inside a gut microbiome that are always releasing hormones, making our moods, and so on.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, I love what you have mentioned. Now, I know we spoke about a lot, but we did not speak about, okay, who is Shameek and what is Farmizen, right? So for people that are interested
Yeah.
to know, can you give a quick introduction about yourself and what your
Sure.
company does?
Sure. So Farmizen is basically a farm to fork marketplace. We help farmers who are growing things organically across the country to sell to consumers on Bangalore and Hyderabad, right? So we are a marketing platform where, as a consumer, you can buy source traceable food. So you can buy food from specific farmers, right? If you want, we can put you in touch with them. You can go and visit their farms. So we focus on building a very transparent and alternate supply chain, right? So that's what we do. We have about 35,000 consumers buying from us regularly in Bangalore and about 5,000 of them in Hyderabad. This year, we are probably going to go to another city as well, right? And yeah, we have been around since 2017. So I hesitate to also call ourselves a startup because a startup should be when you are doing a bunch of experiments and things
True,
like that, right?
true.
I think we are a small internet company which is growing along with the organic market, because organic in India is a sunrise market. It's still a very small percentage of the overall thing, but it's growing pretty fast, right? And everybody is getting very interested in it.
Correct.
If you
It
see, some of the big FMCG majors are also now getting into organic now, right? The ITCs, the Amuls, etc. These guys are all getting into organic, which I take as a very, very positive signal for the industry, because that means that they are going to run a lot of ads. They are going to spend crores on
true.
IPL ads, etc., to educate people, right? Which will help companies like
Yes,
ours as well in the long run.
true. And it's
So I wanted to
interesting.
spend a little bit of time. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go
Go,
ahead.
no, go ahead, Shamik.
Yeah. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about this whole cost of organic food angle, right? So, so organic food right now, depending on whether it's fruits or vegetables, where the difference is much higher, versus organic staples, where the difference is a little lesser. Uh, It is certainly a lot more costlier across the world. But there are two things here at play here. One is that if you look at it, um, India was actually pretty much all organic
Yes.
before Green Revolution, and even now, a large part of India is actually default organic. They don't market themselves as organic. For example, if you buy stuff from any tribal areas, things near
Hmm.
forests, etc., or from very remote Uttarakhand, high up in the mountains where shepherds are growing something. All of this is actually by default organic because many of the pesticides companies don't have a distribution network there,
Yes.
right? So India, thankfully, we have a very large segment of produce which is by default organic, which is not marketed as organic, right? So keep an eye out for those. These are usually sold as naturals, ZBNF, all of this sort of produce, not necessarily certified organic. So that's one good news. The second good news is I think what's going to happen in India with respect to, see, in India, we have leapfrogged a bunch of different things uh, in terms of, for example, UPI, right? We leapfrogged every other country, and suddenly everybody
Yeah,
has this nice
true.
peer-to-peer payment mechanism, etc. So I think I'm hopeful that some of that will happen even in this food and organic space as well. The reason why I say that is because, see, as Indians, we have a deep appreciation for being chemical free in general, right? Which is not so in a lot of Western cultures, right?
Hmm.
I mean, at our homes, etc., we have always thought about, being natural or using less number of chemicals has been a part of our overall ethos and culture across households, right?
Yes.
So I am very hopeful. So which is why I think we are going to be a lot more receptive to this message that, hey, you need to avoid certain chemicals, you need to think about your food and stuff like that. So I think I'm more hopeful about, that this whole thing will progress very fast in India, provided we can get the costs down. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
this costs down, I feel there are two parts to it. One part is, yes, organic farming can be a little costly, especially in the short run when you have just converted a farm into organic. If your farm has been around in organic for quite some time, your soil organic carbon percentage is high, then your soil becomes very productive and your inputs keep reducing every year. So at some point of time, your cost of production catches up to
Hmm.
conventional, but it takes time, right? So that's one part. So I think as many of the people who are doing organic farming, as their farms become more mature, their soil quality improves, etc., their cost will also come down. Second thing is that even then, there are certain aspects of organic farming which are very labor intensive, right? So, for example, 60% of the labor cost, the 60% of your crop costs in organic farming is going to be your labor cost, 60 to 70%,
Hmm.
maybe even till 80%. This is very different from conventional farming. In conventional farming, labor costs maybe 20%, 30% of your
Hmm.
entire thing, right? And a big part of that is basically removing weeds. Okay. So out of that 70%, which is labor cost, out of that 70%, 60, 70% might be just the cost of removing weeds manually. Okay. So you're
Correct.
basically saying that half of your costs are just the cost of removing weeds. Now, thankfully, what happens is as people adopt a little more, they become better at organic farming. They adopt, multi-cropping extensively, where they don't keep enough space for weeds to grow. Uh,
Hmm.
the other thing is that a lot of times weeds grow because there is some imbalance in your soil. So as your soil becomes better, as your farm becomes better, slowly your need for doing weed removal also reduces. So I think these costs will go down over time. Right now the costs are high. They will go down over time, number one. Number two is that right now, one of the reasons why the cost is higher is also because there is a supply demand mismatch, because
Hmm.
there is more demand than the existing supply, uh, which is why
Hmm.
the costs are higher. So I think as more people start growing organically, and as more people who are default organic but are not marketing themselves as organic or not reaching the market, right? See, many of these tribal guys are still selling in the mandi. It's still
Correct.
being sold as conventional produce. As they realize, okay, there is a channel to sell, there are people looking for organic food, and maybe I can get 10 rupees more by doing that, right? If they can plug into that market, then the prices from now being like 100% more than conventional produce, it'll start coming down. It'll get to 20%, 30% more. And when we talk to consumers, what it seems like is that if we can reach a level where it is within like 20% of just more, about 20% more than your existing conventional produce prices, a lot of people will make the switch to organic, right? So it can be a very almost a very drastic flip, right? And the third thing, so I think that's related to the cost of organic, right? So cost of organic is higher, but don't ignore the fact that a lot of that is higher because of a supply demand mismatch as well, right?
Correct.
It's not necessarily that the cost of higher is only because of the cost of production being higher, right? The second angle to this is also, I think, uh, see, the Indian government has become a lot more aware about organic and natural farming in the last few years, right? I think 2 years back in the budget, natural farming was mentioned by Nirmala Sitharaman. She mentioned about natural farming, etc., which was unheard of. All of these things,
Hmm.
I mean, we had never thought people will mention organic farming or natural farming in parliament in a budget speech, right? So I think there is, in general, a lot of intent from the government. If that intent also materializes into actual money being spent, that can be good for the industry. And if that increases the demand, then prices will actually go, demand and supply, the prices will go down. Because as the scale increases, see what happens is when scale increases, uh, cost of servicing that demand reduces.
Yes.
So let's say you stay in an apartment, there are 1,000 people living in that apartment, and let's say only two of them buy organic milk, right? So now Akshay Kalpa, when they're delivering organic milk, their delivery boys has to go there, do those two deliveries, then sign out somewhere else and go two deliveries. So his cost of delivery becomes maybe a lot more. It can be 5 times more than the cost of delivery of a inorganic guy, because the inorganic a guy, he's just doing 50 deliveries in your apartment, right?
Correct.
So this is one example of economies of scale at play. So I think as the scale increases, a lot of the last mile and first mile delivery cost, logistics costs will decrease substantially, right? When that decrease will get passed on to consumers as well, so that will reduce prices. So I think prices of organic are going to get reduced. I am hoping that the government will spend some money educating people about the need for organic. See, right now the government is spending money on the supply side. How do we train farmers? How do we build some capacity there and things like that? But if the government spends money in educating consumers as well, right, then
True.
that will be very good. If you remember, uh, we used to have these ads on TV which would say, right now, for example, you have mutual funds sahi hai ads, right,
Yes.
which educate consumers about mutual funds. We have had ads about, rose khao ande. We have had ads about pure glass full doodh, right? These have all really impacted those industries very positively, right? In terms of these sort of ads. And
Hmm.
I think these campaigns were probably run by industry bodies or government. I'm not sure who ran those, but I think somebody needs to run those, right? Because if we have some more education on the consumer side around organic, it will help everybody actually. Because more scale means prices will go down. And it's a
Correct.
virtuous cycle, right? If prices go down, there is even more scale that comes in and so forth. But I'm very hopeful that in India, we are not going to fall into the trap of what has happened to farmers in US or the food system in US,
Correct.
right? Because if
Correct.
you see, because of our very diverse nature and because of the very fragmented nature of our supply chain, it's still not in control of just a few corporates, unlike in the US.
True. True.
The US, the supermarkets are fully in the control of a few corporates. The food system is completely. In India, it's not so. So the situation is actually better in India,
That's yeah.
right?
That's
Even by
that's
default.
100%. Yeah, that's true because it's not how crazy it is in the US. At least India is way better, and people are also receptive
Correct.
to those things, right? Because as you mentioned,
Correct.
we've been brought up like this from. It's not something like a revelation. Yeah, only from the last couple of years is when Indian farmers actually started using chemicals, fertilizers, and so on. This wasn't happening a couple of like decades ago, right? This is a new invention that people realized that what we should start doing it, and then but by the time we realized it was long. There was one other thing that I wanted to ask you, right, with regards to this big agriculture and health industries. Are they hiding anything from us with regards to how the food is brought to us?
Yeah, I think many different things, right? See, the first thing is that see, end of the day, the incentive or the motivation of all of the big companies is very simple. How do I make the most money, right?
Profit, yeah.
That's so they are not bothered about cost to environment. They are not bothered about farmer income. They are not bothered about really your health, right? they are okay, how can I sell more volumes and more margins, right? That's basically all that they are interested in. Now, I think few things that they don't tell you is, one is the impact, but which we kind of understand. One thing that they never tell you is that the how good your food looks has nothing to do with how good it is for you, right? And we have
True.
got now they have trained us like that, right? So everything now is about really good packaging on the
Yes.
outside, right? And then even inside it looks beautiful. So look, if you look at the tur dal, right,
Hmm.
all the tur dal that we'll get is going to be absolutely beautifully polished, right?
Correct.
Beautifully polished, everything looks good, there's not a single speck, nothing is broken, right? You are also very happy, and they have trained us to look for that, right? The other
Hmm.
day, just one farmer came in. She was very hesitant. So she has a farm near Bandipur, right?
Okay.
And she grows tur dal herself. She's a wildlife photographer, right? So
Hmm.
uh, and weekend farmer. So she has grown all this nati tur dal, and it's all got hand pounded. So not extensively polished, because if you do extensive polishing, you'll end
Correct.
up removing the fiber and even some of the nutrients as well, right? Now, but she was so hesitant to sell it on the platform. She was like, no, no, Shamik, can you test this out yourself and then decide whether you want to list it on Farmizen, because it doesn't look good. And I was like,
Hmm.
this is how all tur dal used to look 20, 30 years back, before we said, okay, factories and let's optimize everything for how things look. So I think this is one thing that people are really doing, this thing around making things look good, but not focusing on what matters, which is taste is very important, and nutrition. Taste and
Yes.
nutrition, these are the two important things they should optimize for, not the look of it, right? And this is the case everywhere, right? This is the case. This looks thing is in terms of jaggery, right? Real natural jaggery where you have not used any chemicals will look much darker in color, but
Yes.
all of the companies, they use some, I forgot this, sodium hypochlorite or something like that to bleach it and make it look lighter in color. And now consumers
Hmm.
have forgotten their original things, and they start, oh, this is looking cleaner and nicer,
Yeah.
right? The other thing that's happening, so this is one angle, the looks of food, and how these companies are training us to focus on looks. The second thing that's happening is, there is obviously people have this focus on health and stuff like that. So a lot of companies are jumping onto that bandwagon to mislead us on things around that, right? Where, for example, they've started using certain terms. So people have started talking, saying hand pounded rice, right? So they'll say hand pounded rice and they'll sell it. Now, if you do the calculations, and we sell hand pounded rice on Farmizen as well. But the hand pounded rice on Farmizen costs 320 rupees per kg. Okay. Because it costs 200 rupees per kg to hand pound it. Because it takes a lot of effort to actually hand
True.
pound it. Almost
True.
99% of the rice that is sold in the market as hand pounded by big brands also, right? So what they do is, they have a machine which gives a hand pounded appearance. Like it will give some inaccuracies. So I think there
True.
is a lot of this, like people are unfortunately exploiting and latching on to some of the insecurities that we have developed as consumers, but not being completely transparent about what they're selling, right? The whole thing around brown sugar also, right? Companies is promoting, saying, oh, brown sugar is much better than your white sugar or refined sugar. So it depends on how that brown sugar has been made, right? 99% of the brown sugar has been made by taking white sugar and then dipping it into molasses to make it brown. If you actually put a teaspoon of it in a glass of water and let it go down, you will see that the sugar that sinks at the bottom is white. So then what
Hmm.
is there? It is the same refined sugar which you have coated in. Yes, is it possible to do unrefined brown sugar? Yes, but so that you have to be fully
Yeah.
transparent about, right? So this, I think, this transparency is missing, and a lot of corporates are kind of trying to, utilize our concern about our food, etc., but not being really upfront about what's going on there, right? I mean, this is just like how companies also sell breakfast cereal as healthy
Yeah.
by,
Exactly.
not mentioning how much sugar up front, and putting it somewhere hidden, and marketing it in some other way, right? So that unfortunately is happening across all sorts of all sorts of food. um, The final thing that is happening is there is a lot of greenwashing also, which is underway, right? A lot of companies use farm to fork as a buzzword, right? Saying, oh, this is all coming directly from the farm, this is all a fair trade, good for the environment, etc. Not all of them are actually doing it properly, right? So this is unfortunately something which is there, but it's okay. I think, see, I mean, if it's a good thing, if some people are not really doing the good thing, but at least they're talking about it, it's still okay. It's still useful for everybody, right?
True,
But in
true.
general, this is something that consumers should also, in general, think about, that who are the people who are just doing greenwashing and who are the people who are actually trying to do something different about it, right? So I think these few things that we see. Finally, I think the overall, most corporates, we are not really, nobody's talking about this nutrition density of food, because as soon as you start talking about nutrition density of food, I think people will realize that uh, food in its most natural form is usually the most nutrient dense,
True.
versus things which have been created, packaged out of it, made for convenience and all of that stuff. See, ideally speaking, you should be eating as much of whole foods as possible. A lot of whole foods, a lot of fresh foods, right? Basically, as near in its form from how it was harvested, versus how different it is, right? But most companies, they actually create a lot of value added products where the thing looks very different from how it was
Hmm.
originally, right? And the reason they do it is because there is an economic reason for that. The reason is because the more value added products you create, the more margins you can extract,
Exactly.
right? It's very difficult to get high margins very close to how the thing was in its production form, because then it's a commodity, right? As you create something around it, as you put in branding money and you've created brand around it, as you have created a product around it, that's when you can get more money. Let's take a small example. If you go to a Starbucks, you pay $400 for a cappuccino, right? The actual coffee which has gone into that is probably 3 rupees, 4 rupees. The farmer
Correct.
that grew the coffee, the farmer that had the dairy and put the milk, he also probably got 3 rupees, right? Remaining 390 rupees out of the 400 is for branding, is for real estate, is for
Correct.
creating a cappuccino product, it's for the uniforms that those guys are wearing and all of that stuff, right? So the same thing, the further away from real coffee
Hmm.
you are getting, the further away from the real crop you are getting, is where corporates make more money, or there are more money making opportunities. But the fact of the matter is that food in the closest form to how it was originally in nature is the most healthiest for us, right? So this
Correct.
simple thing, uh, companies are not telling you about, because it will not help from their profit perspective, right? They would
Correct.
tell you that no, 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 use this candied mangoes, right? What you should eat is eat mangoes when it's season, and don't eat mangoes when it is out of season, right? It's as
Correct.
simple as that, right?
Correct.
And eat as local as possible, eat as seasonal as possible. So these are the important things which companies are not telling you about typically, right?
Correct.
Because they
Correct.
can't make money off it.
Exactly. And I really like the fact that, we've touched upon a lot of pointers, and the whole intent of this interview also was to spread more awareness on these things, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people have heard these words: organic, naturals, antioxidants, nutrition density, and so on, but they haven't had full exposure onto this, right? The reason I wanted to talk to you was because you've been in this space. You're doing this day in and day out, so you have more experience as compared to normal audience. But at least I'm hoping this conversation would help people give more awareness about foods, organic foods, how it is grown, what is the benefit to ourselves, to the nature, environment as a whole, uh, health, everything related to life in general. Right. I hope this would definitely add value to the listeners. But before I wrap the interview, I just want to ask you one last thing. How can people reach out to you and basically learn more about Farmizen?
Sure. So you can email me, Shamik at farmizen.com, SHAMEEK at farmizen.com. I'm also on Twitter, so you can DM me on Twitter as well, Shamik C. Right. And yeah, I usually respond to pretty much all my emails. So please get in touch. Happy to chat and discuss.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shameek, for taking your time out and joining us on this podcast and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, whatever you learned with the audience. I hope and I'm confident that this would add value and people please start making more decisions, learn, educate yourself on what you should be doing, understand organic versus not organic, what are the implications it has on your body, uh, on the environment. Because when all of us learn, that's when you'll become conscious, you'll become aware, and then you will be able to be living a more conscious life rather than allowing these big corporates or allowing someone else to control your lives. Anything else you'd like to say, Shamik, before we wrap?
No, that's it. I think just I'll just add, like to re-emphasize that point, that see, food is something which is very, very, very important to us, right? So give it the importance that it deserves, and stop and think a bit, because every choice that you make as a consumer on a daily basis actually impacts our food system, right? To give you a quick example, when you go into the grocery store next and you're buying your vegetables, just observe how you are buying those vegetables. Are you looking for just fresh stuff, or are you looking for stuff which is looking good?
Hmm.
My sense is that you will suddenly realize that, oh, you are actually looking for good looking stuff. You found one brinjal which is nice and big, you are taking that, and that small brinjal which was a little crooked, you did not buy that. So just stop and think what signal it sends downstream to the supply chain. Because what it tells to the farmer finally is that
Yes.
how your food looks is the only thing which will sell, and which is the only thing which is important. So you as a farmer should only grow good looking stuff, right? And focus only on that. So your actions on a day-to-day basis actually impact the entire thing. So we should not think of ourselves as, oh, consumers are the victims of the broken food system. We are the perpetrators of the broken food systems, right? So it's not the corporates who are the guys who are
Correct.
doing it. It's actually in
Correct.
our control. We, with our wrong decisions, have broken the food system. So now we should be the ones who will drive the change to fix it also, by making those correct decisions, by supporting the right farmers, by making the right choices, right? By asking the government to do the right things, put their subsidies where the right subsidies should be, remove the subsidies where subsidy should. For example, urea subsidy, why should it be there? We talked about urea, how
Yeah.
dangerous it is, but the government subsidizes urea. The government does not subsidize any organic fertilizer, by the way.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of gap between
Correct.
what we talk and what we actually implement. So yeah, but I think it's day zero. Things will improve. So yeah, keep the faith.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shamik, for joining us on the show.
Yeah, cool. Okay,
Awesome.
take care.